Hola, Javier.
Hello.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. How are you?
Very good.
Yeah, good.
Very good. Yeah.
It's a little bit cold
Oh,
here in San Francisco today.
uh-huh.
That's nice. It's
Here is cold also.
Are you in Madrid?
Yes, Getafe.
Oh, Getafe. Oh, yeah. I know Getafe a little bit.
Okay.
They have, I know it for two reasons. There's a police comisario, I think it's called, to get your, for extranjeros to get tarjeta de residencia.
Okay.
And also, I think there's a depot, what is it called? It's like Depot Mart or Depot, it's some kind of store to buy hardware, ferreteria, but grande. It's in a, and I rode my bike there many times for Saladana.
Uh-huh.
It's called Brico Mart. Brico Mart?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would ride my bike with a little trailer with a something to pull, and I would buy things and then bring them back. But I like the Getafe, yeah, the very old, there's a little church, right downtown, cute little church, and then a pedestrian street.
Uh-huh.
You know that little church, just tiny, but it's very old, I think. A couple 100 years old anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't go downtown, it's not that interesting.
I don't know this church.
Wow, okay, well, since we've been talking, many people more have come. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Feliz Año Nuevo.
Feliz Año Nuevo.
Bienvenidos y bienvenidas.
Ay, music.
Feliz año nuevo para los dos.
¡Feliz Año Nuevo!
Diana desde Madrid.
Feliz Año Nuevo.
Porque tenía puesto algo aquí en la cámara y he quedado confusa y se ve todo, ¿no?
I couldn't tell if that sounded like maybe a puppy dog scratching. Well, we hope 2021 is maybe a little safer and more fun than 2020 has been or was. We'll see. Who knows? Well, welcome. And yeah, we'll do a little practice. Start the new year off with a little meditation practice. And then afterwards, we'll continue finishing up about right action, especially the abstaining from sexual misconduct. I realize it ended probably with more confusion than clarity last week. So I want to read a little bit more from Joseph Goldstein's book and a beautiful quote from Thich Nhat Hanh that I really think works in our modern life. And then we'll talk a little bit about right livelihood, which is the fifth factor in the path. And yeah, hopefully I have time for some questions and reflections. So the only little twist, you might say, in the meditation today is I wanted to offer that, and this will be after a little while, that we try to have a perspective of bringing our attention to awareness. In other words, as if awareness, consciousness is always present, pervading in everything, and then we bring our attention to it, to it. We are in awareness rather than awareness being in us. Just a little bit different of a perspective. See if it resonates for you in our practice. So again, it'll be awareness of awareness, but it's almost like attention of awareness. Attention of awareness. Hopefully it'll make sense once we get there. Okay, so if there's no objections, we'll start to meditate. Get my bell a little bit closer here. Okay. Thank you, Lara, for your message. Okay, so we find a comfortable posture. So we want to be comfortable, and yet at the same time, we don't want to be so comfortable that we might fall asleep. And I find it very helpful to have what I call a meditative posture, a posture that reminds my chitta, reminds my nervous system that I'm here to meditate. So one where the back is straight, there's a three-point base. So it could be your knees and your sit bone, or maybe it's your feet and your sit bone, because we want to have stability as well as comfort, as well as alertness. We want to be alert, awake. So if you are really sleepy, you might try keeping your eyes open. And if you really have to, you can even stand, use a standing posture. So to arrive here in this present moment, we can use this posture, this noble posture, as an anchor, as a place to put our attention, bringing the mind into the present moment as well. So maybe you could scan your body with your attention, noticing any sensations in the body, or maybe envelop the body in awareness, in attention, feeling the weight of the body, the sensation of simply sitting. And the body makes for a very good home base, a very good anchor for your attention. So when you notice your mind has drifted off, it's lost in thought, no problem. We're back in the present moment again, and then we come back to the body, feeling it, experiencing it. Even noticing its life signals or life signs, or just noticing that we're alive and this body is alive. And how do we know that? Through the sensations in the body, the experiencing that comes through the body. Or we can use the breath. If you have a practice of using the breath as an anchor, or maybe you are just a little bit tired, it's sometimes better to have a more narrow focus to generate energy. So you can find the breath, feel the breath, experience the breath. Maybe pick a spot where you really can find the breath easily. Maybe even it's a bit pleasant there. So maybe that might be the nostril area, the chest, the belly. You can also combine the breath and the body by feeling the body breathing, the whole body breathing. And if you're feeling a little disconnected from the body today, or it just doesn't seem like a safe place to go today, you can always use listening or hearing as an anchor. Just noticing sounds as they come into the ear, into the eardrum. Trying not to interpret them or make up stories about the sounds, just noticing the process of hearing. And whichever anchor you choose, the body, breath, or hearing, just try to relax into our connection with that anchor. Relax into the experience of noticing whatever it is. And if you're feeling or noticing a lot of thought, a distracted mind, you can support your practice with labels, naming or labeling your experience. Breathing in, for example, breathing out, in, out. And when you notice thought, thinking, thinking. And as you return to your anchor, returning, returning. Doing that as long as it's helpful, supportive for your practice. if you are still experiencing lots of thought, maybe obsession, one trick or tool is to try to feel in the body sensation that might be connected to that thought. It may not be obviously connected, but if you are thinking and there is nervousness or jitteriness or what I call butterflies or something in the body, there's often a connection. Just try to feel whatever that energy might be in the body and see if that loosens up or even stops for some time the thinking. So hopefully your mind is a little more settled, a little more centered, calm even. And if you'd like to transition to a form of natural awareness or awareness of awareness practice or technique, one way you can do this is by imagining or reminding yourself that you can direct your attention to wherever you're called. And just maybe playing around with moving the attention around your body into the space around you, possibly noticing for sounds or just a spatial sense. And then noticing wherever you go with your attention or wherever your attention goes, there is awareness, there is consciousness, there is knowing. And maybe just borrowing this point of view for the next few minutes about how we can become aware of awareness. We can notice it. Just moving our attention, maybe scanning our body, noticing how awareness is everywhere we shine the light of our attention. And maybe also noticing that when thoughts arise and you put your attention on the thoughts, they often hide, they flee, and are replaced with pure space, with just simple awareness, simple consciousness. Just playing with it, or you can continue with the samatha practice with a single object, whatever you want. Good. So no matter where your attention has been, no matter what your experience has been up to this moment, let's return to the body, reestablishing embodied presence, regrounding our mind with our heart and our body. And maybe just taking a moment to thank yourself for your practice, for your dedication, your faith, your intention, and also reminding yourself that there are others on this call also practicing, not only for our individual benefit, but for the benefit of all beings. Such a wonderful expression. And maybe imagining you can extend out in all directions kind, loving awareness. Reaching out to all those who suffer, all those who may be challenged in these tough times, as well as those that are doing just fine. And when you hear the sound of the bell, again, just being aware of whatever arises, if anything, thoughts, feelings. Well, thank you very much for your practice, for supporting my practice. I was just recalling this morning when I was reading a little bit of the Dharma and preparing for our call, how lately my life, back, for some months now, I've been working as a business person, very hard, sometimes 6.5 days of the week, it seems like. But these Sunday mornings, for us, it's morning time. I get to immerse in the Dharma, and what a relief, for one, and it's just so different. It's just so much more beautiful and relaxing and meaningful. And I'm looking forward. I'm halfway through my business project and got the harder part, I think, done. So I'm feeling optimistic that it'll maybe come to an end in January. I hope I can come back to Spain. And when I was living in Spain, I was like devoted to the Dharma 6 days a week and maybe one day of the business. And then it's been the other way here. So I'm looking forward to going back in big part for that. I just love this path. It's the first one I found. It really fulfilled me. Anyways, thanks for listening, letting me share. So yeah, I thought we would go back to the Noble Eightfold Path. It's one of these things where I feel like can get really lost in my life, or even like what to do on these calls and so forth. But then there it is, there's the Noble Eightfold Path, or there's the other teachings of the Buddha, and it just brings some stability and some direction. You know, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to reinvent. I have a brain that thinks it has to invent things, right? It has to figure it out and come up with a new answer. And in this particular one, no, I can't come up with anything better than what already exists. So just stick with what's there. So I do want to reach back though and go back to the right action. So I'm going to just go on share screen here. And let's see if I go here. So just as a reminder of our little eightfold path, right? And now we are on number 4, right action. Samakamanta. Which, as you may remember, is these 3, which are also 3 precepts that are often used on retreat when we go on longer retreat: abstaining from taking life, abstaining from taking what is not given, and abstaining from sexual misconduct. So it was this 3rd one where we ended last week, and you know, I admit the original teachings of the Buddha about this weren't that helpful, and are not that helpful, I think, for modern life. I mean, for some people they still could be, but they're not quite as maybe open or as flexible as I think they could be. And so let's see, sweetie, you know how I go from there to Kindle? Can I just go down here and get it?
No, you have to.
Stop? Okay. So I'm gonna just try it and see what happens. Do you guys see a book now? Do you see, no. Okay. All right, I will go back to share screen and then go to Kindle. How about now? Do you see a book? Okay. So last week we read from Bhikkhu Bodhi's book about abstaining from sexual misconduct. And as I mentioned, you know, he's a Pali scholar. He is a Theravadan monk who has dedicated his whole life to that particular expression of the path. And in some circles, they've even started to call it early Buddhism rather than Theravada, early Buddhism, trying to really capture what the Buddha might have said when he was alive and those people who were around him at that time. And as a result, it can seem a little, I don't know, archaic or, you know, antique almost. So this book here is Joseph Goldstein's mindfulness book, which sometimes I have with me. This time I don't, but it's like the Bible of mindfulness, and we've used it a lot. And so he brings a more modern perspective, I think, to this particular precept. And again, I love that, like what I call American Buddhism or Western Buddhism doesn't seem to be so rigidly attached to any one version of Buddhism as say others. You know, there are some people that are like, it's got to be this particular Mahayana or nothing, or Theravadan or nothing, or the Thai forest tradition or nothing. And Joseph Goldstein, the founder of the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, he uses other walks, right? Other branches, including that of Thich Nhat Hanh, who I just think is an amazing teacher, and he's done amazing things. So this is Thich Nhat Hanh's version of this precept, okay, of this characteristic of right action. So I'm just going to read it, but you can read along, hopefully. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to stop. They consider it a training. In the Thich Nhat Hanh version, they consider these precepts trainings, something we can train and practice, right? So they're not like laws or something rigid. They're a training. And this is a vow to train ourselves in this way. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I vow to cultivate responsibility and learn ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. To preserve the happiness of myself and others, I am determined to respect my commitments and the commitments of others. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. So I think if we follow this training, I think we'll do just fine in today's world, right? It doesn't, I don't think there's any way that this would prevent us from living a fully sexual life as sexual beings, and should keep us from causing harm. Huh? See me? How do you know? Oh, what about I'm right there? All right. Anna Monica is telling me that you can't see me, but I don't. Can you guys see me and Anna Monica? Yeah, we're there.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, let's see. So I really like that. This is a couple other things that I thought was very interesting and insightful about Joseph Goldstein's. Joseph, he set up the Insight Meditation Society as a place to do long retreat in America, in the United States. And he led the 3-month winter retreats there for years. I don't know, 30 years maybe, where now he just comes in as a guest. Like when I did it, he just came as a guest one time, but he would be the main teacher for many, many years. And so he's very oriented towards retreat. And so this next thing I'm going to read is something that one of the benefits of these long retreats is you really get to see the nature of your mind when it's in slow motion, right? Everything's moving so slow, everything's so calm, you can really see clearly how the mind works, including this thing about desire. So he writes, when we pay careful attention to the energy of sexual desire, we can learn a lot about the nature of desire itself and the energy systems of the body. So for some of us, sexual desire may be the strongest form of desire that we have. It may exceed the desire to buy a car or to get a job or to meditate, right? Because it's so primal, it's part of what it is to be a human being. And so sometimes we need something to be really obvious, gross, you might say, to see it. If it's too subtle, we don't see it. And so sometimes we take something that's really gross, really obvious, really powerful, like sexual desire. We get to know it, right? We get to know what it feels like to want, to crave, to have that energy. And then we start to see how it plays out or arises, manifests in more subtle forms. And so it can really be a doorway, it can be a teacher into desire, which is, one of the hindrances. It's really the source of our suffering, right? Is this desire, this always wanting. And so he offers us a question that we can ask ourselves. When sexual desire arises, how does the mind relate to it? We can watch our mind. It's like if sexual desire arises, do we immediately think, oh, I need to act on it, right? That could be a reaction, right? Oh, sexual desire arises, I need to do something. Or do we just notice it? There is sexual desire again. How interesting. What's underneath that maybe? For some people, sexual desire might arise when they're feeling sad, when they're angry, when they're depressed. Who knows? It could be a form of, how should I call it? A kind of like a soothing reaction to an unpleasant feeling. You know, like I know a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but I know several people and have met several people who are, compulsive masturbators, right? They masturbate a lot, and they do it in part because they can't deal or be with their feelings. So they use sexual desire, they use sexual expression as a way of medicating themselves. And so this, taking this a little bit deeper, more subtle, he writes, in meditation, we begin to feel the whole body as an energy field. And this field is felt and expressed in different ways depending on where we focus our attention. This was kind of what I was trying to get at in the second part of the meditation, to sort of open us up to this. I used a different word. I used awareness or consciousness, but you can also just think of it as energy, right? And wherever we move our attention, there is energy flowing, just existent, just present all the time. And these desires, these sexual desires, these cravings for food, whatever they might be, they're just arising and passing in this energy field. They're just forms of energy arising and passing, arising and passing. So maybe I'll stop there. Yeah, I hope that was a little more useful, right? And even though the precept for a monk or a nun, a monastic, is to abstain completely from sexual activity, as lay people, obviously sexual activity, sexual desires, this can be a very big part of our life. As you get older, it's a little less, but it's still there. And this is just part of being human, right? And the Buddha understood this, and it's not in any way meant to shame us. This is not a shaming practice at all. It's much more about wisdom and getting to know ourselves and getting to know our energies. So I'm going to transition to the next factor, unless there are any questions or anybody who would like to comment on the sexual misconduct precept. Okay, and if something comes up later, just wave your hand or whatever. But now we'll go to the next factor, the fifth factor. This is the third of the sila, the moral precepts, and this is about livelihood. And I kind of like this one just because, I've had a long business life, and I probably treaded outside of what would be considered right livelihood. But even though now I have still have a business, and I make good money and stuff like that, I do think I'm staying within the right livelihood. At least I hope I am. And what I like about it is that in Buddhism, there's also no shaming. Not only is there no shaming about sexual desire, sinoke, I love that. In addition, there's no shaming about being wealthy financially or making lots of money. This is perfectly okay in Buddhism. It's how do you make your money and what do you do with it? This is what's important. So I'll share screen real quick just to go through a summary. Okay, so hopefully you can see right livelihood or wise livelihood. So the guidelines are that it should be obtained in a legal way. Seems reasonable, okay? So we don't want to break the law. We want to do it peacefully without coercion or violence. That also seems pretty reasonable, pretty easy, huh? We want to do it honestly, without trickery or deceit. And wealth should be acquired in ways that do not entail harm, that do not cause harm or suffering of others. I would say of those four, that honesty one probably is the one that we can, sometimes we have to manage, even as an employee. I remember I used to work at a pizza parlor when I was in high school, right? And I remember I've told this story about how my father told me, if you're going to steal, just don't get caught. That was the teachings that I got at home, right? So at this pizza parlor, when I was the cashier, I had developed what I thought was a clever way to steal it, like $1 here and $1 there, and maybe by the end of my shift, I may have stolen $5 or $6 extra dollars. I thought I was so clever. So I was obviously not being honest, and arguably I wasn't even doing it in a legal way because I was stealing. Those would not be considered wise livelihood. And I was just an employee making, I don't know, $1.50 an hour or something like that. So $5 or $6, it was a lot of money. Well, eventually they did find out, sort of, and they put me back in the dishwashing area. So for the next many months, I only washed dishes. I did not handle any money. Luckily, they didn't fire me. They probably should have, but. Okay, so then the Buddha gave us 5 particular forms of livelihood that do not constitute right livelihood. These are just off limits, okay? So we're not supposed to deal in weapons. So hopefully none of you are selling any bombs or guns or anything. That would not be right livelihood. We're not supposed to trade in living beings. So this includes raising animals for slaughter. So we don't want to do that. And we also don't want to deal in slaves or prostitution. We don't want to deal in the production of meat and slaughter. So at a ganaderia, I guess, that would not be considered right livelihood. We do not want to deal in poisons, and we do not want to deal in intoxicants. So for me, intoxicants would even include alcohol. So the one that's probably at the highest risk of maybe somebody practicing as livelihood, but also wanting to practice the Buddhist path would be if you're a bartender, right? If you're behind the bar and you're selling intoxicants, that one I think is probably not right livelihood. Could be a little gray, but probably not. Probably not. Did you have a thought about that?
Oh, well, I was just noticing it said dealing in. So I would imagine if you worked at a bar, you didn't need to be the server, but if you're in the business, so you could be the driver that drives the alcohol to the bars, you could be the cashier, you could be, for all of these, just, and it could expand out exponentially too, but I was just thinking of all the other roles that would probably be included.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let me go back to, I think this one I was going to read a little bit from Bhikkhu Bodhi. So this is back to Bhikkhu Bodhi, okay, the monk. Right livelihood is concerned with ensuring that one earns one's living in a righteous way. I mean, it's just kind of straightforward and simple in that way. See if there was one other thing I wanted to say about. Yeah, that's maybe that's it from Bhikkhu Bodhi. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to Joseph Goldstein. He quotes. So this is a little story in the Kalama Sutta about the Buddha talking to these people, the Kalamas, about the teachings. And it's a little, it's, I don't want to say wordy, but it might be a little difficult to understand. It can be sometimes. However, I think it explains very well the Buddhist perspective on these types of things, like right livelihood, like right action, any of the teachings really. So what the Buddha's thought to have said, what we believe he said to a group of these Kalamas, these people from the area of Kalama, somewhere in India, they were perplexed. They were confused by the various views expounded by different teachers. Back in the day, the Buddha wasn't the only teacher. There were still lots of Hindu teachers. There were Jains. There were various different gurus, right? And teaching different things. So the Buddha says to this group, he says, it is fitting for you to be perplexed, Kalamas. I love that. He starts right off with empathy, right? It is fitting for you to be perplexed, Kalamas. Fitting for you to be in doubt. Come, Kalamas, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay, by a collection of scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning. So he's saying, don't use any of those things. But when, Kalamas, you know for yourself these things are unwholesome, these things are blameworthy, these things are censured by the wise, these things, if accepted and undertaken, lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them. When you know for yourself these things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are praised by the wise, these things, if accepted and undertaken, lead to welfare and happiness, then you should live in accordance with them. So this is one reason why I love Buddhism, right? Is it's not telling me that I have to believe anybody, that I have to blindly follow any sort of teaching just because it's said, even by the Buddha himself, doesn't mean I have to believe it or do it. But instead, I've got to be true to myself. So what Joseph adds here at the end, which I've highlighted, the Buddha's teaching is never about blind belief, but about the wisdom of our own inquiry, our own investigation. And the more we practice, the more I've practiced, the clearer it becomes about what is wholesome and what is not, what is helpful and what is not. When I first came into this practice 13 years ago, it was so cloudy, so crazy. I couldn't see this close in front of my face. But over time, it's just become more and more clear. And I believe this is a promise, but don't take my word for it, right? It's for you to figure out. But this is a promise. If we keep practicing, if we stay on the path, if we stay within it, if we practice right livelihood, right action, right speech, these things will become more clear. And, we might adjust our behaviors as a result. I could even see, let's say you work in a restaurant and people order alcohol, glass of wine, maybe a beer or whatever. That's probably okay. And for a given person, there might come a point where they don't even want to do that, and they don't even want to serve anybody meat, right? Because they know that caused the killing of a being, of a living being. This could happen, but it's for every individual to decide. There's nobody telling us, you've got to do it like this, right? It's for us to decide what works for our heart, what allows us to sleep at night, like that.
Just something really
Sure.
quickly about the path and how things change. one of my early jobs was at a delicatessen, which is kind of like working at a Museo de Jamón, believe it or not. I was already vegetarian, but at the time for me, it seemed fine. You know, I was going to just do my job. I wasn't eating it, but there was a lot of meat being sold. Today, I would not take a job at a delicatessen, but at the time, there was no conflict inside of me. It was just where I was at the time, and I ran it through my own moral compass. And because I wasn't participating and I needed work, the people were good people. I took the job, and it was a great experience. But today, for instance, I would look for something else. So it's just interesting because I just remembered that right now. I, you know, the time I've changed. So it's a cultivation.
Yeah, cultivation. That's exactly right. So is there anybody who would like to share their experience about this, or has any reflection or questions even?
Yes, I would like to say that in the society where we are living nowadays is so, excuse me for the word, damn difficult to be coherent, you know, with your principles. When the metal, the coltan in your telephone comes from the mines of blood in Congo, when you know that for your clothes, that for your things, children might be working, people is working in countries of the South with very bad conditions, when you know that for having the quality of life that we have, there are so many people working for it with worse conditions, when we know that our multinationals, our governments are stealing from the countries of the South, when you know all of that, it's really, really, really difficult to be coherent. And also, everything we feel from Mother Nature, what we are doing with the planet. So I find very, very difficult to be coherent, but at the same time, I can't drive myself crazy. And, you know, so it's like Ana Monica said, I'm not in that conflict. I don't see, because otherwise I would go crazy, you know. But I found that nowadays is very difficult. All of this is very, very difficult. It's not just about your job, but the lifestyle that we're having in this capitalist society.
Yes, I agree, Nacho, 100%. And I love the word coherence that you use, because that is important. And we also need to keep in mind that this is a practice of non-harming. And the first person that we should think about is ourselves. And so, yes, if you were to just think and think and think and worry and worry and worry about all these people who are suffering, you are going to suffer. Nobody will benefit if that happens. So we keep this in mind, and we do what we can to minimize the suffering of others, including the consumption of things that we know have caused suffering. And also to remember, you know, the Buddha even said it back then, and things were much more holy or natural, let's say, back then. But he said this practice goes against the stream. Even then, society was going one way, and he said, and this practice goes another. It's even worse now for us, right? And with social media and, you know, all the technology is bombing us in one direction, and yet we're trying to go in another. It's tough. This is not easy. Nobody said it's an easy path. Maybe arguably it's somewhat simple, but it's not easy for sure. And all we can do is what we can do and do our best. But thank you for bringing that up, because all that is important. All of that, our consumption is just as important as how we make our money, what we do. Yeah, thank you. Patsy, did you want to say something? I can't see you, but I think you're unmuted, huh? No? Okay. I'm going to put you back on mute, though. Well, good. Well, thank you. And if nobody else wants to say anything, we can do a little metta maybe send it out to Congo and places like that. I mean, right? This is one of our tools. It helps us, and maybe it gets it out into the universe and helps others too.
Even if it's hard, it's still important to be awake,
Yeah.
to know, and then we can make a choice. And sometimes we don't have it in us to make, the best choice, the right choice, but I think it's still important to know who's making the clothes, where it's coming from, what it costs, how long it took to get there. So yeah, just be awake and compassionate with what we can do, but we have to know, because if we don't know, we can't choose.
If there's no mindfulness, there can be no healing. If there's no consciousness, if we're not awake, right? I mean, even this going back to Spain, I'm aware that when I get on that plane, I'm contributing to the pollutants that go into the air. And so I want to minimize that. I want to come back very badly, but I also know that if I come back too soon, then I'll have to come back to the United States. And, so just trying to balance those things. I think that's the best we can do. Okay, why don't we do a little metta? Find comfortable posture. Try connecting, if you can, to the heart. Not expecting anything, but I usually put my hands there just to remind myself where it is. Feel that warmth. So again, let's start, as we often do, with ourselves, because boy, if we don't take care of ourselves first, it's really hard to contribute, to be of service. We need to self-nurture, give ourselves self-empathy, wish ourselves to be well. So may I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I live with ease. For some of us, that often can feel a little difficult, putting ourselves first. Just noticing that. So next, let's do a benefactor. Sometimes we can even do this one first because it sort of opens the door. So bring to mind somebody you admire, you love unconditionally, there's no complications. So maybe it might even be the Buddha, could be Christ, could be a wonderful uncle or aunt or grandparent. Somebody really just easy to wish them well. Bring this being, could be a pet as well, an animal. Bring this being to mind. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be safe. May you live with ease. And now let's try a difficult person. This would be somebody who maybe hurt our feelings, said or did something that we wish they had not. Maybe somebody just stuck in wrong view. Let's offer metta, goodwill to them. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be safe. May you live with ease. And finally, all beings in all directions without exception. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings be safe. May all beings live with ease. And finally, let's dedicate our practice today, renounce, let go of the fruits of our practice, including the teachings of the Buddha, our Sangha, and our Buddha nature. Offering these things up to the benefit of all beings. May all beings be happy and peaceful, healthy and strong, safe and protected. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, free from war and violence, discrimination, racism, slavery, and free from coronavirus. And may all beings find their path, find that can hold them in the direction of the end of suffering, in the direction of happiness. May all beings be free. Well, thank you so much for showing up every Sunday, supporting our practice. It's really helped me so much. I mean, we're on month 10, is it now, of this coronavirus challenge? And thank God that you're here, and thank for Zoom. If you'd like to unmute yourself and say hello, feel free. And then if anybody's still around, we will set up some small groups. You guys can share.
Goodbye. Thank you. I'm going to dinner.
Okay, bye, Javier. Stay safe.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, Paxi.
Thank you and bye.
Happy New Year.
Goodbye.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Everyone, thank
Bye,
you. You
Paxi.
too.
Bye, Nacho.
Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Oh, we are.
We are 3.
hello,
Well, we can.
still.